The Nevada desert stretches endlessly beneath a sky that seems almost too vast to belong to Earth. As the last colors of twilight fade, the world transforms into shades of deep blue and soft silver. The air cools with a gentle sigh, and a stillness settles over the land so complete it feels as though time itself has paused to listen. The desert at night is alive in its silence, the whisper of the wind through dry brush, the distant hoot of an owl, the soft shifting of sand beneath unseen footsteps. It is a landscape that breathes mystery, a place where isolation meets eternity. As you lie beneath that enormous sky, your thoughts begin to drift, carried by the rhythm of your breathing and the pulse of the night itself. The stars emerge one by one, scattered like ancient embers across the darkness. There are so many that the mind struggles to comprehend them, each one a quiet, distant sun burning in infinite space. And yet, among them, sometimes, something moves. Not a shooting star, not a satellite tracing its predictable line, but something different. A flicker that holds still. A light that seems to hover, almost aware. It is in this strange stillness that countless stories have begun. Travelers resting along lonely highways, pilots flying through the black sky, ranchers stepping out to check their fences, all have looked up and seen the same unexplainable lights. They have watched them appear and vanish, move in deliberate silence, pulse softly before disappearing beyond the horizon. What they saw would follow them for the rest of their lives, a question that no science or sleep could erase. But the desert's relationship with mystery goes back much further than radar or modern technology. Long before roads and runways carved through its vast emptiness, the indigenous peoples who lived in these lands told stories of lights that came from the heavens. To them, these lights were not threats but messengers, celestial travelers who visited the earth in moments of great importance. Around fires beneath the same stars, they spoke of the sky spirits, luminous beings that appeared as glowing orbs to guide or warn. These tales were not of fear but of reverence, rooted in the belief that the universe was alive, aware, and capable of speaking to those who would listen. As settlers arrived centuries later, their journals and letters began to echo the same accounts. Miners in the 1800s described wandering flames floating above the desert floor, lights that seemed to drift toward them, only to vanish when approached. Wagon travelers wrote about strange lanterns in the hills that followed them through the night, keeping pace with their slow, creaking journeys. Some believed them to be campfires, others spirits of the dead. But over time, as the number of sightings grew, so too did the sense that something larger was at play, something that defied every earthly explanation. The desert, in its vast emptiness, has a way of magnifying the unknown. In the absence of city lights and human noise, every flicker, every glimmer, stands out with sharp clarity. It invites both wonder and unease. The human mind, faced with infinite darkness, begins to fill it with meaning, shapes, movement, patterns. Yet some of these lights are too precise, too deliberate, too intelligent in their motion to be imagined. Witnesses across generations describe the same thing. Lights that seem to react, to move as if aware of being watched. And so, over time, the Nevada desert became more than a place of silence. It became a place of questions. A landscape where the natural and the supernatural meet under the vast sweep of stars. Scientists have mapped its surface and studied its storms, yet the night sky above it remains stubbornly unknowable. Beneath that endless dome, humans have stared upward for centuries, trying to make sense of what they see, searching not just for the source of the lights, but for meaning itself. As you listen now, lying still beneath that dark, glittering sky, imagine the quiet pulse of those mysterious lights far beyond the ridges. The wind drifts softly across your skin, the stars shimmer like memory, and the desert hums with the low, eternal rhythm of the unknown. Somewhere in that silence, between the real and the imagined, the story of the Nevada lights begins, not as a moment of fear, but as an invitation to wonder. For here, in this vast, quiet desert, mystery is not an intruder. It is home. The story begins on a calm summer evening in 1962, when a long-haul truck driver named Raymond Holt was making his way along a desolate stretch of Highway 375, the road that would later earn the nickname the Extraterrestrial Highway. The sun had long set, leaving the desert cloaked in a cool, silvery darkness. The only sound was the steady hum of the engine and the faint rattle of loose tools in the back of his rig. Around midnight, somewhere between Alamo and Rachel, Raymond noticed something strange, a soft glow flickering in the distance above the mountains. At first, he thought it was a flare or perhaps the lights of a distant aircraft. But as he continued driving, the light grew brighter and closer. He slowed the truck, rolling down his window to get a clearer view. The air was still, unnaturally quiet, and in that silence, he could hear the faint electric hum of something not quite right. The light wasn't moving like an airplane or helicopter. It was gliding smoothly, silently, shifting from white to amber, then to a deep, pulsating red. It hovered above the desert floor for several seconds before darting upward with impossible speed and vanishing into the stars. Raymond sat frozen, his heart pounding. He'd been on the road for 20 years, seen every kind of weather, every kind of mirage. But nothing like that. When he finally reached the next gas stop, he mentioned it to the clerk, only to hear that others had seen it too. "The desert's been acting strange lately," the man said, almost casually, as though the sky had moods of its own. Within weeks, similar reports began surfacing across Nevada. Pilots, ranchers, and even law enforcement officers described lights that defied logic, objects that moved without sound, hovered in formation, or split into multiple glowing orbs before rejoining as one. A small group of airmen stationed near Nellis Air Force Base allegedly filed unofficial reports after tracking unknown aerial phenomena over restricted airspace. The incidents were brushed aside as atmospheric interference or classified testing, but the details didn't fit the usual explanations. No aircraft, they claimed, could accelerate or change direction that sharply without tearing itself apart. Local newspapers began running small stories buried deep inside their pages, often with titles like "Strange Lights Startle Motorists" or "Unexplained Glow Over Desert Hills." Most readers dismissed them as tricks of the eye or exaggerated tales from lonely travelers. Yet, quietly, the number of sightings continued to rise. Radio hosts began inviting witnesses to share their experiences late at night, their trembling voices cutting through the static. One woman from Tonopah described watching a glowing disk descend behind a ridge, followed by a silence so heavy it felt like the earth itself was holding its breath. Another man reported that his car radio began crackling violently just before a blinding white flash lit up the desert around him. Soon, the phenomenon began to attract the attention of amateur sky watchers and journalists from Las Vegas. They brought cameras, telescopes, and tape recorders, camping out in the desert to see the lights for themselves. Some returned with nothing but the whispering wind and endless stars. Others captured brief, shaky footage of glowing spheres darting across the horizon, too fast to be aircraft, too smooth to be meteors. The footage wasn't definitive, but it added fuel to the growing belief that something extraordinary was unfolding over Nevada. Yet beneath the curiosity, there was always an undertone of unease. The lights seemed almost playful at times, appearing when least expected and vanishing just as quickly. But for those who witnessed them up close, there was an unshakable sense of being watched in return, as though the desert itself was aware of their presence. And with each new sighting, the question deepened. Were these lights simply advanced military experiments, or something not of this earth at all? As the reports multiplied, whispers began to circle about a secret installation deep within the Nevada Test and Training Range, a place so remote that few had ever seen it, and fewer still were allowed inside. A place that would soon become the most infamous patch of land in America, Area 51. And whether by coincidence or design, the lights always seemed to appear not far from there. By the mid-1960s, whispers about the Nevada lights had grown too frequent to ignore. The American public was already on edge. The Cold War had stretched into the stars, and every flash in the sky carried the weight of suspicion. It was the dawn of the space age, a time when humanity was learning to reach beyond its cradle, yet also confronting the uncomfortable truth that the sky might not belong solely to us. Newspapers spoke of rockets and satellites, of Soviet tests and American breakthroughs, but for those who lived near the Nevada desert, something else was happening. Something that no government report could easily explain. To understand the mystery, we must look at what was unfolding behind closed doors, because in 1955, deep within a dry lake bed known as Groom Lake, the U.S. government quietly began work on a top-secret military site. Officially, it didn't exist. Unofficially, it was where the nation's most advanced aircraft were born. The base would later be known as Area 51. From this hidden outpost, the Air Force tested high-altitude reconnaissance planes like the U-2 and, later, the State Route 71 Blackbird, aircraft so advanced for their time that even commercial pilots mistook them for extraterrestrial crafts. When locals saw glowing lights streak across the desert night, the military had a convenient explanation ready: weather balloons, atmospheric distortions, or classified flight tests. But these reassurances only deepened the mystery. The timing was too coincidental. The desert lights and the rise of Area 51 overlapped almost perfectly. Historians later discovered that the CIA deliberately encouraged these cover stories. According to declassified documents from Project Blue Book, the Air Force's official UFO investigation program, more than half of all UFO reports in the late 1950s were linked to test flights of experimental aircraft. When civilians described fast-moving lights that changed altitude or direction without sound, they were often unknowingly watching prototypes like the U-2 glinting in the sun's last rays. Yet even the government's most loyal defenders admitted that not all reports could be explained away. Roughly 20% of sightings, according to Air Force statistics, remained unidentified after investigation. That margin of mystery left just enough space for wonder and fear to thrive. Meanwhile, scientists and psychologists began studying the human side of these encounters. Dr. J. Allen Hynek, an astronomer who initially worked as a consultant for the Air Force, grew skeptical of the military's dismissive tone. He noticed that witnesses often described details too consistent to be mere imagination: synchronized movements, silent hovering, metallic reflections, geometric formations. He later coined the term close encounter, suggesting that perhaps some cases demanded more than ridicule. They required genuine inquiry. Hynek's quiet defiance would later help legitimize the UFO phenomenon as a serious field of study, drawing a bridge between government secrecy and public curiosity. The more the government denied, the more fascinated the public became. In small desert towns like Rachel and Alamo, bars and diners began filling with maps, photos, and hand-drawn sketches of where the lights had been seen. Truckers swapped stories over coffee, families pointed telescopes toward the night sky. The Nevada desert was transforming into a living mythology, part military frontier, part cosmic mystery. Some believed the lights were alien visitors monitoring humanity's nuclear ambitions. Others suspected Cold War espionage, foreign drones or spy satellites disguised as celestial anomalies. But perhaps the most unnerving possibility was that both explanations could be true at once. Maybe the government was testing secret craft in response to something they didn't fully understand. Maybe the truth behind the lights wasn't entirely human, but also not entirely alien. As official silence deepened, conspiracy began to bloom like mirage heat above the sand. The desert had become a stage where classified innovation and cosmic mystery played side by side, each mirroring the other until no one could tell where science ended and the unexplained began. By the end of the decade, the Nevada lights were no longer just a local curiosity. They were a symbol, a reflection of Cold War paranoia, human ambition, and the eternal longing to understand what lies beyond. Whether born from jet engines or stars, they had captured something deeper, the realization that the desert sky might hold more secrets than anyone was willing to admit. As the 1970s unfolded, the phenomenon of the mysterious lights over the Nevada desert evolved from whispered campfire tales into a national curiosity. Eyewitness accounts became more organized, and for the first time, detailed descriptions began to reveal patterns. People from vastly different backgrounds, pilots, ranchers, tourists, soldiers, were describing the same shapes, colors, and movements with uncanny precision. The most common reports spoke of glowing orbs, perfectly spherical and silent, capable of sudden acceleration and impossible turns. Others described large, triangular crafts, each corner marked by a pulsing light, gliding low across the desert floor with an eerie grace. These weren't quick flashes mistaken for shooting stars. They were deliberate, intelligent motions. Something, or someone, appeared to be flying them. One of the most well-documented cases came in the spring of 1974. A group of campers near the Reveille Range had gathered around a fire when they noticed a formation of 3 lights moving slowly across the sky. At first, they assumed it was a group of planes from Nellis Air Force Base. But as they watched, the lights stopped. They hovered motionless for nearly a minute before shifting into a perfect triangle and descending closer to the horizon. The campers recalled how the air grew heavy and silent, as if the desert itself was holding its breath. Then, without warning, the lights shot upward, vanishing in a split-second streak of white. Several of them captured blurry photographs, but the film later showed strange static distortions, as though the images had been partially erased by an unseen force. Similar encounters poured in. A sheriff's deputy near Tonopah described being followed by a sphere of light the size of a car, which trailed his patrol vehicle for several miles before disappearing behind a ridge. Commercial pilots reported lights pacing their aircraft, maintaining exact formation before darting away at impossible speeds. A former Air Force radar operator stationed near the Nevada test site claimed that on several nights, unidentified objects appeared on their radar screens, but were later deleted from official records. "They told us to forget what we saw," he said years later in a documentary interview. But how do you forget something that defies everything you know about flight? What made these accounts so compelling wasn't just their frequency, but their consistency. Witnesses described the same colors, deep amber, bright white, or icy blue, often accompanied by a faint humming vibration felt more than heard. Some experienced electrical interference, car engines stalling, watches stopping, compasses spinning. The phenomenon seemed to interact with the physical world, not just the imagination. Psychologists studying the reports noted that many witnesses were reluctant to come forward, fearing ridicule or disbelief. Yet their testimonies carried a tone of calm conviction. "I know what I saw," they would say, "and it wasn't a plane." Journalists began to take notice. Local radio stations in Las Vegas aired late-night call-in segments where residents described their encounters in hushed, uncertain tones. Newspapers sent reporters to the small desert towns where sightings were most frequent. One investigative journalist, Thomas Reed, compiled over 200 testimonies into a single report he titled, "The Desert Watches Back." In it, he noted how the lights often appeared near restricted zones, not directly above military installations, but close enough to be noticed. The implication was unsettling. If these were foreign crafts, they were testing boundaries. If they were American, the secrecy was extraordinary. Meanwhile, the public imagination was being shaped by cinema and television. Shows like In Search of, and films like Close Encounters of the Third Kind began to blur the line between scientific curiosity and spiritual awe. The Nevada lights fit perfectly into this cultural moment, real enough to inspire fear, mysterious enough to inspire wonder. Each new sighting added another thread to an ever-growing tapestry of questions, one that stretched from the ordinary to the cosmic. By the end of the decade, the Nevada desert was no longer just an empty landscape. It had become a living myth, a place where humanity's search for meaning collided with the vast unknown. And while the government remained silent, The witnesses' voices grew louder, echoing across the dry valleys and open skies. The mystery of the lights was no longer an isolated phenomenon. It was becoming part of America's collective dream, the quiet, glowing heartbeat of something waiting to be understood. By the early 1980s, the lights over the Nevada desert had moved beyond local rumor and into the realm of national intrigue. Journalists, scientists, and even government employees began to weigh in, not always with answers, but with questions that only deepened the enigma. The U.S. Air Force, which had long dismissed reports of unidentified aerial phenomena as misinterpretations or optical illusions, found itself at the center of growing public suspicion. Officially, the government maintained that there was nothing unusual in the skies above Nevada. Unofficially, silence had become its own kind of admission. Documents released under the Freedom of Information Act revealed fragments of truth. Declassified memos from Project Blue Book, which had ended in 1969, admitted that a small percentage of sightings remained unexplained. Around the same time, rumors began circulating about a newer, darker program operating in secrecy under the Department of Defense. Researchers noted how these whispers coincided with unusual activity near Groom Lake, the restricted site known to insiders as Area 51. Witnesses described convoys of unmarked trucks, strange aerial tests at night, and heavy security presence around the perimeter. The government claimed it was testing new aviation technologies, but no one was permitted to confirm what kind. The tension between the official narrative and eyewitness accounts created a fertile ground for speculation. In 1989, the mystery took a dramatic turn when a man named Bob Lazar came forward in an explosive interview with Las Vegas News reporter George Knapp. Lazar claimed to have worked at a site near Area 51 called S4, where, he said, the U.S. government was reverse engineering extraterrestrial spacecraft. His descriptions of saucer-shaped vehicles, anti-gravity propulsion, and element-based energy sources captured global attention. Whether one believed him or not, his story changed everything. Suddenly, the lights people had seen for decades were no longer just strange. They were evidence of something monumental. The government denied Lazar's employment records, his education history, and any connection to a facility called S4. But the damage was done. His claims reignited public obsession with Area 51 and thrust the Nevada desert into the center of worldwide speculation. Journalists descended on Rachel, Nevada, the closest town to the restricted base, and documentaries began airing footage of strange aerial activity. Late-night talk shows debated whether Lazar was a fraud or a whistleblower. For believers, the dots connected too neatly: the glowing orbs, the silent craft, the military secrecy, all pieces of a larger puzzle pointing toward an extraterrestrial presence being kept hidden from the public. Meanwhile, skeptics and scientists urged caution. They argued that human error, atmospheric refraction, and classified aircraft could explain most sightings. During this period, the Air Force was testing advanced stealth technology, including the F-117 Nighthawk and later the B-2 Spirit bomber. These aircraft were unlike anything the public had seen before: sleek, angular, and capable of reflecting radar in unusual ways. When their lights caught the night sky, they could easily resemble otherworldly vehicles. Still, the sightings persisted long after these projects became declassified. Media coverage amplified both sides. Television specials showed grainy footage of bright orbs darting across the desert. News anchors discussed flying saucer fever with an uneasy mix of skepticism and fascination. The more the government insisted there was nothing to see, the more people believed there must be something to hide. Psychological studies conducted during this time noted that secrecy itself breeds belief, that in the absence of transparency, the human mind will fill the void with possibility. By the close of the decade, the Nevada desert had become synonymous with the unknown. The mysterious lights were no longer just unexplained phenomena. They were symbols of distrust, wonder, and the limits of human knowledge. Whether the lights were the byproduct of advanced military engineering or something from beyond our world, they had succeeded in doing something profound. They had united skeptics, believers, and dreamers alike in their shared fascination with the night sky. The government, for all its secrecy, had inadvertently turned the Nevada desert into the world's largest stage for speculation. Every flash of light, every whisper of movement above those silent sands, now carried the weight of decades of mystery. And somewhere in that tension, between truth and illusion, between science and imagination, the lights continued to appear, flickering softly over the ridges, as if reminding humanity that not every secret can be contained. As the 1990s dawned, the mysterious lights over the Nevada desert entered a new phase, one defined not just by sightings, but by cultural transformation. What had once been an isolated local mystery had now grown into a worldwide fascination, fueled by the expanding reach of television, talk radio, and the early days of the Internet. For the first time, stories of glowing orbs and silent triangular craft weren't confined to dusty Nevada highways or UFO conventions. They were being broadcast directly into living rooms across America, woven into documentaries, dramatizations, and late-night discussions that blurred the line between myth and investigation. The decade began with one of the most famous mass sightings in modern history, the Phoenix Lights of 1997. Though technically hundreds of miles from the Nevada border, the event reignited public interest in the Southwest's night skies. Thousands of witnesses, including police officers, pilots, and families, reported seeing a massive, V-shaped formation of lights gliding silently across the desert. For many, it felt like confirmation that the Nevada incidents were part of something far larger, stretching across states and decades. The U.S. military eventually claimed the lights were flares from a training exercise. But to the public, the explanation felt too convenient, too familiar. Another entry in a long list of official denials that seemed to explain everything and nothing at once. Meanwhile, Area 51 had fully entered the realm of legend. Declassified satellite images and whistleblower testimonies only deepened the intrigue. Journalists like George Knapp continued to report on unusual activity near Groom Lake, bright objects zigzagging through the sky, unmarked aircraft performing maneuvers beyond known physics. Nighttime watchers gathered on nearby ridges with binoculars and cameras, dubbing themselves skywatchers. They camped in lawn chairs, scanning the horizon for those telltale glimmers. Many captured strange footage, lights forming perfect triangles, or orbs vanishing in bursts of silent brilliance. Whether authentic or not, the footage spread rapidly, passed between friends and uploaded to early internet forums, where digital communities of believers began to form. In these years, the Nevada desert became both a physical and psychological landscape. For believers, it represented the veil between humanity and the unknown. For skeptics, it was a mirror reflecting our collective imagination. Psychologists studying the phenomenon suggested that such widespread belief might not simply stem from gullibility, but from something deeper, a yearning for wonder in an age of information. The faster science advanced, the more people seemed drawn to mysteries that science couldn't yet explain. Government responses only fed this fascination. Official statements about Area 51 were rare, and when they did come, they were cryptic. The Air Force admitted the base's existence only in 2013, but even in the 1990s, documents hinted at ongoing classified projects involving unconventional propulsion systems. These vague acknowledgments blurred the line between fiction and reality. What exactly counted as unconventional? To those who had seen the lights firsthand, the word itself was confirmation that something extraordinary was being kept hidden. The 1990s also marked the rise of UFO culture in entertainment. Television shows like The X-Files and documentaries such as Unsolved Mysteries transformed the Nevada desert into a character of its own, vast, secretive, and timeless. It became a place where anything could happen, where the boundary between military technology and cosmic visitation was paper-thin. Tourists began flocking to the tiny town of Rachel, Nevada, where the now famous Little Ale and Bar became a hub for enthusiasts and truth-seekers. Visitors would trade stories under the stars, pointing out glowing dots in the distance, their voices calm and reverent, as though speaking of sacred things. Through it all, the lights continued. Some nights they were distant flickers beyond the mountains. Other times, they appeared close enough to make the ground shimmer faintly in their glow. Eyewitnesses described feeling both awe and calm, a strange peace that settled over them as they watched. Whether real or imagined, the lights seemed to evoke something deeply human, the sense of being part of a vast and living universe. By the close of the decade, the mystery had transcended its origins. It was no longer about proving or disproving UFOs. It had become a meditation on knowledge itself, on what we can know, what we are told, and what forever remains just out of reach. The Nevada desert, with its stillness and silence, had become a kind of cathedral for the unknown, and the lights above it, whatever they were, continued to call softly across the decades, inviting humanity to look up and wonder. As the 1990s dawned, the mysterious lights over the Nevada desert entered a new phase, one defined not just by sightings, but by cultural transformation. What had once been an isolated local mystery had now grown into a worldwide fascination, fueled by the expanding reach of television, talk radio, and the early days of the Internet. For the first time, stories of glowing orbs and silent triangular craft weren't confined to dusty Nevada highways or UFO conventions. They were being broadcast directly into living rooms across America, woven into documentaries, dramatizations, and late-night discussions that blurred the line between myth and investigation. The decade began with one of the most famous mass sightings in modern history, the Phoenix Lights of 1997. Though technically hundreds of miles from the Nevada border, the event reignited public interest in the Southwest's night skies. Thousands of witnesses, including police officers, pilots, and families, reported seeing a massive, V-shaped formation of lights gliding silently across the desert. For many, it felt like confirmation that the Nevada incidents were part of something far larger, stretching across states and decades. The U.S. military eventually claimed the lights were flares from a training exercise. But to the public, the explanation felt too convenient, too familiar. Another entry in a long list of official denials that seemed to explain everything and nothing at once. Meanwhile, Area 51 had fully entered the realm of legend. Declassified satellite images and whistleblower testimonies only deepened the intrigue. Journalists like George Knapp continued to report on unusual activity near Groom Lake, bright objects zigzagging through the sky, unmarked aircraft performing maneuvers beyond known physics. Nighttime watchers gathered on nearby ridges with binoculars and cameras, dubbing themselves skywatchers. They camped in lawn chairs, scanning the horizon for those telltale glimmers. Many captured strange footage, lights forming perfect triangles, or orbs vanishing in bursts of silent brilliance. Whether authentic or not, the footage spread rapidly, passed between friends and uploaded to early internet forums, where digital communities of believers began to form. In these years, the Nevada desert became both a physical and psychological landscape. For believers, it represented the veil between humanity and the unknown. For skeptics, it was a mirror reflecting our collective imagination. Psychologists studying the phenomenon suggested that such widespread belief might not simply stem from gullibility, but from something deeper, a yearning for wonder in an age of information. The faster science advanced, the more people seemed drawn to mysteries that science couldn't yet explain. Government responses only fed this fascination. Official statements about Area 51 were rare, and when they did come, they were cryptic. The Air Force admitted the base's existence only in 2013, but even in the 1990s, documents hinted at ongoing classified projects involving unconventional propulsion systems. These vague acknowledgments blurred the line between fiction and reality. What exactly counted as unconventional? To those who had seen the lights firsthand, the word itself was confirmation that something extraordinary was being kept hidden. The 1990s also marked the rise of UFO culture in entertainment. Television shows like The X-Files and documentaries such as Unsolved Mysteries transformed the Nevada desert into a character of its own, vast, secretive, and timeless. It became a place where anything could happen, where the boundary between military technology and cosmic visitation was paper-thin. Tourists began flocking to the tiny town of Rachel, Nevada, where the now-famous Little Ale Bar became a hub for enthusiasts and truth-seekers. Visitors would trade stories under the stars, pointing out glowing dots in the distance, their voices calm and reverent, as though speaking of sacred things. Through it all, the lights continued. Some nights they were distant flickers beyond the mountains. Other times, they appeared close enough to make the ground shimmer faintly in their glow. Eyewitnesses described feeling both awe and calm, a strange peace that settled over them as they watched. Whether real or imagined, the lights seemed to evoke something deeply human, the sense of being part of a vast and living universe. By the close of the decade, the mystery had transcended its origins. It was no longer about proving or disproving UFOs. It had become a meditation on knowledge itself, on what we can know, what we are told, and what forever remains just out of reach. The Nevada desert, with its stillness and silence, had become a kind of cathedral for the unknown, and the lights above it, whatever they were, continued to call softly across the decades, inviting humanity to look up and wonder. In the modern era, the mystery of the Nevada desert lights has become something larger than the phenomenon itself, a cultural echo that stretches across generations, blending folklore, science, and philosophy into something deeply human. What began as isolated encounters beneath a silent desert sky has evolved into a shared myth that lives in documentaries, podcasts, movies, and online communities. People no longer simply witness the lights. They interpret them, each through their own lens of belief and wonder. For some, the lights are proof of alien visitation, a reminder that humanity is not alone. For others, they symbolize the frontier spirit, the endless human drive to explore what lies beyond comprehension. Filmmakers, musicians, and storytellers have all found inspiration in the glowing skies of Nevada. The desert itself, once known only for its desolation and military secrecy, has become a stage for imagination. Movies like Close Encounters of the Third Kind, Paul, and countless documentaries borrow the same visual language: glowing orbs against vast horizons, the hum of wind, the whisper of something unseen. Tourist stops along Highway 375, now known as the Extraterrestrial Highway, sell alien souvenirs and UFO-shaped mugs, turning myth into livelihood. Even sleep apps and meditation channels use the motif of mysterious desert lights as a calming image, a bridge between the unknown and the peaceful, between fear and fascination. Culturally, the lights have become a mirror. They reflect humanity's eternal dance between skepticism and belief, logic and imagination. Psychologists have suggested that our attraction to these mysteries is rooted in something ancient, an evolutionary curiosity toward the unknown that once helped our ancestors survive. The same instinct that once made early humans stare into the darkness, searching for predators or signs of divine presence, now drives modern people to search the night skies for meaning. The lights, in this sense, are not just physical phenomena, they're psychological symbols. They invite us to confront our limitations, to acknowledge how much of the universe still eludes our understanding. Sociologists also note how the Nevada lights have quietly shaped public perception of government secrecy. Area 51, once a classified site for aircraft testing, became a cultural shorthand for hidden truths. The association between the base and unexplained lights has fueled decades of suspicion and storytelling. In some ways, the lights became a way for people to express collective anxiety about unseen powers and untold knowledge. They became a metaphor for the boundaries of truth, glowing in the distance, visible yet unreachable. And still, those who chase them do so not just for answers, but for the comfort of the chase itself. In more recent years, as artificial intelligence and surveillance have advanced, the lights have taken on a new meaning, a symbol of mystery in an age of total information. When everything can be recorded, analyzed, and explained, phenomena that can't be pinned down become sacred in their own right. People seek mystery not as a source of fear, but as a refuge from certainty. The lights over Nevada remind us that even in a world of endless data, there remain truths that lie just beyond reach, shimmering enigmas that ask us not to solve them, but simply to look, to wonder, and to feel small beneath the stars. And so, as night falls over the desert once again, the phenomenon continues, glowing softly, quietly, perhaps aware of the eyes that seek it. To those who visit, the lights mean different things. To scientists, a puzzle. To believers, a message. To dreamers, a lullaby. Whatever they are, they endure, not as evidence or illusion, but as a gentle reminder that mystery, like sleep, is something we must surrender to, not control. In their glow, humanity finds both peace and possibility, an eternal light that flickers not just in the desert sky, but in the restless heart of every person who dares to wonder. In the modern age, the investigation into the Nevada desert lights has entered an entirely new chapter, one illuminated not only by technology, but by a collective determination to finally understand what generations before could only speculate about. No longer are these glowing anomalies dismissed as mere superstition or tricks of the eye. They are studied, tracked, and documented with tools that would have seemed impossible just decades ago. Across the lonely expanse of Nevada, researchers now use everything from high-speed cameras and magnetometers to sophisticated radar systems and satellite data, attempting to capture every flicker of light, every pulse of unexplained energy that dances across the desert sky. As the years have passed, patterns have begun to emerge. Some lights appear seasonally, often coinciding with particular atmospheric conditions, dry heat, temperature inversions, or magnetic fluctuations, while others seem to follow no predictable schedule at all. Witnesses describe luminous orbs hovering silently above the sand, their colors shifting from amber to white, sometimes green, occasionally blue. The lights can hang motionless for minutes before darting away at impossible speeds, leaving no sound, no vapor trail, no trace of their passage. Drones, aircraft, and satellites have been ruled out in many of these cases, as their movements simply defy known aerodynamics. For the first time in history, scientists and government agencies alike are openly acknowledging that these phenomena deserve study. The Pentagon's release of UAP, Unidentified Aerial Phenomena, reports marked a turning point in public perception. For decades, the official stance on unidentified objects in the sky was silence, ridicule, or denial. But now, through official documents and congressional hearings, the U.S. government admits that some encounters remain unexplained, that they exhibit flight capabilities beyond current human technology. Although the Nevada lights are rarely named specifically in these reports, their descriptions align uncannily with the kinds of phenomena recorded by Navy pilots and radar technicians. Silent, hovering spheres. Sudden bursts of acceleration. Intelligent motion that suggests observation rather than randomness. This newfound transparency has inspired independent researchers, universities, and civilian groups to join the search. Across Nevada, amateur astronomers, physicists, and ordinary skywatchers have established networks of cameras and monitoring stations to capture real-time footage of the lights. Some operate from their backyards, others from remote desert outposts, their screens glowing through the night as they wait for a brief flicker on the horizon. Online communities share live feeds and analyze footage frame by frame, cross-referencing their observations with flight paths, satellite trajectories, and meteorological data. While many sightings turn out to be explainable, flares, weather balloons, or experimental aircraft, a stubborn few continue to resist all rational interpretation. One of the most famous modern studies took place near Tic Tac Peak, one of the few publicly accessible vantage points overlooking the perimeter of Area 51. Over several months, a team of researchers documented dozens of unexplained light formations. They ruled out commercial traffic, military exercises, and even astronomical events. What they found instead were irregular, hovering spheres that appeared, shifted, and disappeared in complete silence, sometimes pulsing rhythmically as if communicating. The footage, when analyzed, showed energy signatures inconsistent with any known propulsion system. While skeptics called it atmospheric plasma, others argued that the patterns were too deliberate, too organized. NASA scientists have also begun to express interest in atmospheric plasma as a possible explanation. According to one theory, under certain geological and electromagnetic conditions, the desert might produce naturally occurring luminous plasma, energy fields that appear as floating lights. These phenomena could, in theory, account for some sightings. Yet even this explanation fails to cover all cases, especially those in which the lights seem to move with intention, respond to observers, or split and merge in intricate formations. The debate remains open, science circling around mystery, never quite able to close the loop. Meanwhile, psychologists have turned their attention to the human side of the phenomenon, not to disprove the experiences, but to understand the profound emotional responses they evoke. Eyewitnesses often report a deep sense of peace, fascination, and connection to something greater. Some describe the experience as spiritual rather than frightening, an encounter that alters how they perceive the world. Sleep researchers studying these individuals have even documented unusual neurological patterns following sightings: vivid dreams, heightened creativity, and improved relaxation. It is as if the mystery itself, rather than the answer, produces healing effects. This psychological dimension has led some to propose that the lights are not only external phenomena but catalysts for introspection. When people gaze into the night sky and witness something unexplainable, they confront the limits of their own understanding. In that moment, the desert becomes more than geography. It becomes a mirror reflecting the endless curiosity of the human spirit. The lights remind us that mystery, when approached with openness rather than fear, can awaken something ancient in the mind, the primal awe that once guided early humans as they stared into the unknown. Still, the investigations continue. Scientists are now using AI-driven analytics to scan through thousands of hours of desert sky footage, searching for anomalies that fit known patterns of movement. Some findings suggest the presence of electromagnetic fluctuations before a light appears, as though the air itself becomes charged. Others have detected faint, low-frequency sounds, below the range of human hearing, moments before the lights emerge. None of this data offers definitive proof, but each piece adds to a growing puzzle that points toward a phenomenon both physical and mysterious. What's most remarkable about this new era of study is how it unites skeptics and believers alike. The old divide, between science and mystery, reason and imagination, seems to be fading. Researchers, once wary of ridicule, now speak openly about the Nevada lights at conferences and universities. Journalists write about them without irony. And the general public, long fascinated by UFOs and government secrecy, now sees the topic not as fringe entertainment but as a legitimate field of exploration. For the first time in modern history, mystery and credibility are no longer opposites. They coexist, each strengthening the other. And yet, for all the data, instruments, and technology, the mystery endures. The lights still appear without warning. They hover, pulse, and fade into the silence as they always have. Every new discovery seems to raise new questions rather than answers. Are they a natural phenomenon, a secret human technology, or something truly beyond our world? Could they be an ancient force, an atmospheric intelligence that has always been here, waiting for us to notice? Or are they, perhaps, a reflection of our own evolving consciousness, an external manifestation of the human longing to connect with the unknown? The truth, for now, remains just out of reach. But maybe that is the point. Perhaps the Nevada desert lights are not meant to be solved like a puzzle, but experienced like a poem, felt, contemplated, and remembered. The scientists continue to measure. The skywatchers continue to film. And still, the lights continue to appear, defying explanation, shimmering softly across the desert night. In their quiet persistence, they remind us of something profound, that even in a world illuminated by science, mystery remains essential. It keeps us humble, curious, alive. It reminds us that not all things that glow must reveal their source, that some are meant to guide us, not toward answers, but toward wonder. And in that vast, silent desert, where technology meets the timeless sky, the mysterious lights continue to flicker, steady, patient, eternal, waiting for the next pair of eyes to look upward and dream. Tourists still traveled to Rachel, Nevada, and stood along the extraterrestrial highway, looking up into the same boundless sky that had inspired generations of dreamers. Some came hoping to see proof of life beyond Earth. Others came simply to feel small beneath the stars, to reconnect with the ancient sense of awe that once guided humanity's gaze upward. Then came 2019, the year of the Storm Area 51 movement. It began as a joke, a viral meme suggesting that people should simply rush the gates of the base to see them aliens. But as the event gained traction, tens of thousands expressed interest, and hundreds actually showed up in Nevada. What could have been chaos turned into a festival of curiosity, a gathering of believers, skeptics, and wanderers who came not to break in, but to celebrate the mystery itself. Music played, signs waved, and beneath the laughter there was an unspoken truth. Humanity had come to peace with its curiosity. The desire to know had become part of the story, part of who we are. Through all this, the desert remained unchanged. The winds still whispered across the dunes. The stars still flickered in the cool, endless sky. And somewhere, far out past the hills, the faint glow of strange lights could still be seen, drifting silently over the sands. Whether they belonged to experimental crafts, advanced surveillance drones, or something far older and wiser than humanity, no one could say. But maybe that was the point. The Nevada lights, once feared and misunderstood, had transcended the need for answers. They had become something else, a symbol of wonder in an age of certainty, a quiet reminder that mystery still exists, and that sometimes the unknown isn't meant to be solved, only experienced. As night falls over the desert once more, the sands glimmer faintly under the starlight, and the horizon stretches endlessly ahead. The air is still. The mind quiets. And for those who look long enough, patiently and without expectation, there it is again, a single light flickering in the distance. A reminder, steady and timeless, that even in a world where everything can be explained, the universe still keeps some secrets for itself. Yet the Nevada desert lights, for those who have observed them, remain more subtle, more enigmatic. They are not dramatic streaks across the sky or high-speed craft observed through radar. They are patient, quiet, hovering phenomena, intimate in their presence, as if the desert itself were holding them, preserving their mystery while inviting humanity to participate in it. Researchers across disciplines have attempted to understand these lights from every possible angle. Atmospheric scientists examine the role of ionized gases, electromagnetic fields, and temperature inversions. Aerospace engineers explore the possibility of experimental propulsion or advanced drones. Psychologists and neuroscientists study the cognitive and emotional responses of witnesses, investigating why the lights often induce feelings of calm, awe, and heightened perception. None of these approaches, however, fully explains every documented encounter. The lights resist categorization. They exist at the edge of knowledge, a boundary between what is measurable and what can only be felt. Perhaps what makes the Nevada lights most remarkable is the duality they embody. On one hand, they are a scientific puzzle, a challenge for those who seek to measure and analyze every flicker. On the other, they are profoundly personal, experienced differently by each observer. Some report awe and inspiration, a sense of connection to something vast and eternal. Others describe a meditative calm, as though the lights communicate not through words, but through the quiet realization of human smallness in the face of infinite space. In this way, the lights serve as both evidence and metaphor, evidence that unknown phenomena exist, and metaphor for the enduring human drive to seek, to question, and to wonder. The lights also invite reflection on humanity's relationship with secrecy, knowledge, and the unseen. Area 51, once a symbol of government mystery and clandestine military technology, casts a long cultural shadow. The Nevada desert lights are intertwined with this secrecy, embodying the tension between what is known and what is deliberately hidden. Their appearance, often near restricted airspace, encourages questions about the limits of human perception and the ethical bounds of classified knowledge. And yet, rather than causing fear, the lights evoke contemplation. They remind us that mystery in itself has value, that the unknown can inspire as much as it unsettles. For those who experience the lights directly, the impact can last a lifetime. Many witnesses report that the memory of the lights, the gentle glow against the desert horizon, the quiet sense of presence, the feeling of being watched without threat, remains vivid decades later. Some incorporate the experience into meditation, creative work, or nightly reflection. Others use it as a reminder of the beauty of curiosity itself, the reward of turning attention outward, toward the skies, and allowing oneself to be humbled. In this sense, the lights are timeless teachers, whispering lessons about patience, openness, and the acceptance of mystery. Even as technology advances and society demands explanations for everything, the Nevada desert lights continue to elude definitive categorization. They hover, pulse, and vanish, steadfast in their quiet persistence. They are neither fully alien nor fully human-made, neither purely physical nor purely psychological. They occupy the space between certainty and wonder, asking only that we look, notice, and participate. In their presence, we are reminded that the universe is far larger, stranger, and more intricate than our everyday lives suggest. And in the quiet glow of these lights, we find a rare gift, the permission to marvel, to dream, and to embrace the unknown without fear. As you lie beneath a starlit sky tonight, imagine the soft, pulsing glow of those distant lights drifting across the Nevada horizon. Feel the cool desert wind against your skin, the subtle hum of stillness around you, and the gentle weight of centuries of observation pressing softly into memory. The lights are there, always there, flickering with patient persistence, inviting humanity to look, to wonder, and to feel the profound quiet of a mystery that has endured for decades. They are not to be conquered or fully explained. They are to be witnessed, to be contemplated, to be carried in thought and memory as a reminder that some secrets exist not to be solved, but to nurture imagination, curiosity, and awe. In the end, the Nevada desert lights remain timeless. They are lullabies for the curious, beacons for the restless, and quiet companions for those who seek not answers, but reflection. They flicker and fade, yet they never truly disappear, lingering in the mind's eye as gentle proof that the universe, in all its vast and quiet brilliance, still holds mysteries meant to be seen, felt, and cherished. They carry humanity into night, into imagination, and into the peaceful surrender of wonder, a gift as enduring as the stars themselves.